Hi there, everybody. Very warm welcome to the British Library food season and to the food season's big weekend, second day of our big weekend, which has just been quite a magical time. I'm Angela Clutton and I am a food writer, cookbook writer, and also the co-director of the food season, which is generously supported, as you just saw, by Mila. So looking forward to the conversation we're about to have, which, as you can see, Melek and Bee have brought some things with them, which is just going to be gorgeously exciting to delve into. And I think that some people in the audience may have brought objects as well to share and to talk about. Before we go too much further, can I just ask for a little show of hands of who has brought something they would like to have the opportunity to discuss? So a couple here. You don't have to have brought something to want to talk about it, but is there anyone else? I clocked 2 hands here, a hand there. Okay, so we've got a few people who have things they'd like to discuss. And of course, during the session, if something comes to mind and you think, oh, I would really like to have the opportunity to talk about that thing that's in my life, or that I wish was in my life, or was in my life, or any of those things, please do say so every time I come to the audience. We're not going to do audience at the end, as it were. We're going to have this quite an organic, flowing session of things, which I think suits the nature of this conversation, which is all, I suppose, in some ways about connection, isn't it? So hopefully you will feel that we up here are connected with you and vice versa. To introduce our lovely panel, we have Melek Erdal, writer, cook, broadcaster, storyteller. I think that's the nicest word I've ever seen in anyone's bio, storyteller, and it's so you. Exploring themes around community, identity, and resilient joy. This is such a well-written bio, though. Melek's recipes, voice and words feature in The Guardian, BBC Radio 4's The Kitchen Cabinet, and a column in Vittles. And in 2024, Melek was the Fortnum Mason Cookery Writer of the Year. And I happened to be standing behind Melek when you won. And the shrieks of joy, but not just from you, hun, everyone around was like so chuffed and excited that you'd won, and also that it was so massively deserved. So,
thank you.
Joy to have you here. Bee Wilson, a home cook, journalist and writer, written for such a wide range of major publications. I just don't think I can go there, really, in terms of trying to say which ones. 6 books on food-related subjects, things Consider the Fork, First Bite, books which I know so many of us who care about how we feed ourselves consider fundamental, really, to how that thinking evolves within the sector, but also for ourselves about how we relate with food. Her first cookbook, The Secret of Cooking, came out last year? Year before, last year?
Autumn 23.
Autumn 23. And won Guild of Food Writers Award.
I was there.
You were there. With the shrieks of joy then as well.
We were trying to remember when we last seen each other. It was then, wasn't it?
As well.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, just a gorgeous book. And your latest book, The Heart-Shaped Tin, Show and Tell. This is all about show and tell for the next hour. Came out, when did it come out, Bee?
Only about 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Anyone who follows Bee on socials, which I highly recommend, will have seen that Bee is just, you've been everywhere with this, events and conversations and discussions. Yeah. It's a book that's really connecting with people.
That's what's so beautiful. I just think that if you ask someone, what is the most meaningful kitchen object in your life and why, it's not a trivial thing. Like sometimes people act as if kitchen objects are something just kind of very surfacey or small. You straight away go deep. I mean, even if you're just talking about something like a melon baller. I mean, I was just saying to you backstage, a woman in Edinburgh, we were getting it, one of the chapters in this book is called The Melon Baller because both of my sons, who are 10 years apart in age, have a weird fetish for the family melon baller. And well, it's not that kind of fetish, but it's kind of like who gets to be the person. They don't use it, obviously, for making fancy garnishes. It's like anytime we eat melon, they believe you should eat it with a melon baller rather than a teaspoon. But I think it's a lot of families I've spoken to since say, you know, there's, well, I think you may be getting to this, there's a special spoon in the house. For them, the melon baller is a spoon. But anyway, we're in this conversation, and this woman in Edinburgh put her hand up at the end and said that back in the 80s, like, she knew she had made it, and as she felt kind of gone up in the world and become middle class, when she purchased a melon baller for herself. And then she kind of paused and said, I don't even like melon. And it was just one of the the best things. But equally, if you say to someone, is there an object that reminds you of your grandmother, of your mother, of your father? And there've been tears at every event I've done so far.
I mean, I think if we all make this through without crying, that will be.
No, we're not aiming to get
it's
through it
okay
without
to
crying.
cry.
The tears are allowed. The tears are welcomed.
I think that's absolutely right, because we were just saying earlier, I sort of said that flippant comment in the green room earlier, and Bea was quite right to say, she has done just now, it's actually okay and a good thing to let these things move us. And everything we're going to talk about is, by definition, really personal. And so it is going to be that kind of space, and I know we'll all be hugely respectful and interested to hear each other's stories and to talk and to share and to listen. So you're quite right, feeling that emotion of it is a very, very positive thing. Bea, do you want to just kick us off by telling us about the heart-shaped tin, which obviously has given the book its name?
Yeah, so this is my first object, which is, as you can see, it's a heart-shaped tin, and it's a little bit rusty and a little bit sadder than it was when I bought it. So this was the tin in which I baked my own wedding cake when I now think, probably far too young. But it was bright and shiny at the time. And my husband-to-be told me that he loved fruit cake but hated glacé cherries. So I thought, I'm not going to get some generic wedding cake. I'm going to bake it myself without any cherries. And there are pictures of us cutting a cake made in this tin before we went off on our honeymoon, looking blissfully happy. And then June 2020, end of the first lockdown, he left me quite suddenly, out of the blue, for another person. Didn't find out about her for a bit later. But a couple of months after that, I was in a shocking state at the time. And I do understand that this was just clumsiness and that people kind of stumble around when you're heartbroken. But at the time, it felt very weird and unsettling and almost like magic, which was this tin had, as I say, it had been bright and shiny and fresh and new. And then it was the tin that I sometimes baked my own children's birthday cakes in. And I had at the back of my mind that maybe one day I'd use it to bake our 25th wedding anniversary cake in. And we were getting close. We made it to 23 years. But at the same time, I'd kind of neglected the tin. It was just sitting in this hallway, maybe neglected a bit like the marriage itself. And one day, I just was walking past it 2 months after he left, doing some laundry, and it appeared to jump out at me. It just landed on the floor in front of my feet. And I thought, this is a sign. And I knew it wasn't a sign, but my thought, this is a sign, and that the tin was somehow speaking to me, set me on this quest to find out other objects from other people that had similar quasi-magical meaning. And the book's divided up into sections of all the different things that objects can mean to us. Well, not all of the things, but some of them. Charms, mementos, junk, tools, gifts, symbols, and treasure. And part of what I found interesting about structuring it is that the line between junk and treasure is very slim sometimes, and it's all in the eye of the beholder. And yeah, this tin kind of was the one that began to teach me that kitchen objects can have profound meaning because of the association they have with those that we've loved and often lost, whether through separation or whether through death. The book turned out to be as much, if not more, about my mother and her dementia and how she related to her own objects and I related to her through kitchen objects. But yeah, this was what started it.
Beautiful.
How do you feel now when you see that tin?
How do I feel now using it? Well, there's kind of a plot spoiler because the final chapter is also about the heart shape. So I'm going to start crying because I'm going to do the first. Aww. It's just, yeah.
Do you want us to move along?
No, the tears are welcome.
No,
the tears are welcome. Please cry, all of you. No, the final chapter is also the heart-shaped tin. For my 50th birthday, when this thing happened, and I described the tin falling down, everyone I said it to, whether in real life or on social media, said, oh, you should bake yourself a lovely divorce cake, and then you'll be happy. And I appreciated the suggestion, but I didn't feel in any way ready for that. But then a couple of years on, it was my 50th birthday, and I thought, no, I will bake a cake in this, and it's going to have new associations. And instead of a fruit cake, I baked a Nigella buttermilk birthday cake, which is what I'd always made for my kids when they were little. And I put chocolate ganache over the top, and my 3 kids were at home. And then I had a celebration a few months later with some of my, sorry, I'm going to start crying, with some of my oldest friends. And one of the other people that is in the book, so as I say, it's about other people's objects too. There's a young Syrian chef called Faraj al-Nasser who very generously talked to me about his treasures, which are these 2 metal vegetable coras, which represented Aleppo to him. It's an Aleppo that he could never go back to. Sorry, it all makes me cry. But he came and cooked for my 50th birthday, and I realised that, yes, tins can have, objects can have more than one life, even if people can't. And the person that I really missed was my mother. And I will get to another object that was associated with that 50th birthday feast. But yeah, I felt this tin was, she was the person that taught me to love making cakes. She was the person that taught me, she always kept those butter wrappers in the fridge where that was how you'd start greasing the edges. So I kind of, it's strange that I thought this tin was all about him. And by the end of the book, and where my own slightly rusting heart is now, it's much more about my mum than it is about my ex-husband.
That's just absolutely lovely. It occurred to me as I was reading the book, or listening to it really, I've been listening to the audio rather than reading it, and as I'm sure you can well imagine from having heard Bea talk so beautifully then, hearing Bea's voice talking through all of these objects and associations is very, very moving.
Thank you.
But it really occurs to me through it that the loss is such a big theme, and different natures of loss, and I think we're going to really kind of come to that in a second, actually, Melek, with some of your things, because it's about things that you have lost and how you then connect with them, or things, but also things that you maybe sort of never had, and so you're reaching for those connections. It is about loss, because it's also about finding, and what these objects do is sort of pivot around those 2 ideas of things you lose, and then finding yourself or discovering new meaning in things, as you're saying, with that tin. Melek, when you were just quickly showing me, before we came on, a couple of your objects, there were a couple of things you mentioned things which were connecting you with family members which you never actually knew. So a connection which wasn't there, but these objects take you to it.
Okay.
It's like proper show and tell, isn't it? I love this.
So I actually did I did a kitchen cabinet episode where we were asked, what's the oldest thing in your kitchen? And I talked about my granddad's egg spoon, which is just a regular spoon that he bent slightly, so because he loved runny eggs to dip the spoon in. And he passed away when I was 2, and we moved here anyway, so I don't really have memories of him, and the memories I do have are probably memories of what other people have told me. So I shared the story of this, and then it actually, and I can see a friend in the audience who knows when I shared the story, because I shared the story and I asked people, what's the oldest thing in your kitchen? Yeah. And it was just incredible how people connected with that and shared photos of the oldest things in their kitchen and what it meant to them.
I need to say, it's on Instagram,
sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm going to direct people to it. It's back in May 22.
Yeah.
So you can scroll through Melek's Insta and you can find it.
It's in my highlights, yeah.
Yeah, and it's in your highlights as well.
Yeah,
okay.
People can see.
Totally worth going back to have a look at, because your question was, as you say, what's the oldest thing in your kitchen? But that did get quite quickly sort of translated in people's minds into
what means the most to them.
What means the most.
Why. And people shared their stories so generously, and it was beautiful. But so, when my granddad passed away, this is what Mum got in the inheritance. So this was what she was left behind. And I know she had that left bittersweet feelings in me when I realised what that meant.
And she had siblings?
11 of them.
Wow.
So that's why she was the youngest, and she got left with the spoon. So they had land in Istanbul, and the land got shared amongst the men.
Wow.
And then so the women got the meaningful objects, or what they felt were meaningful. And Mum really wanted Granddad's radio. because she had a lot of memories of him just sitting next to the radio and listening to the radio, and that was the thing that gathered everyone. And she was the last one who left the house, and she took care of him when he was unwell. So the radio was a real thing for her, but she never got it. And the person who got it wasn't very important, wasn't a sibling, and she was so hurt by that. And it's been years of trying to get the radio back, and it being in different houses, and us going, let's sneak in, they'll never know.
So you know who has
it's not
it?
important to them.
You know who has it?
We know who has it. It's a cousin, and it doesn't mean anything to her. She's just now stubborn because she knows it means.
Oh,
and
gosh.
my uncle went to visit, and he almost got it. Like, so he went to visit just like pretending that he was like, so how you been? Long time.
Yeah.
And then he tried to
Go and take somebody a cake or something, like while they're eating
and
it, sneak into the oven.
Yeah, and we still haven't managed to get it, but it's still a mission amongst the family members because they feel so bad that mum didn't get the radio. But so she got this egg spoon, and she just made it a point to use it wherever she could, to say, yeah, no, I'm going to use it wherever I can, and it's going to be the most important thing, the best thing out of everything that we could have got. So it just pops out everywhere.
Hold up the shape so we can also shape it,
yeah.
because the neck of it is...
Yeah,
incredible.
exactly. It's subtle, but yeah, so it pops out everywhere. Like, I went to collect it because it's not in my house, mum's house, and it came out of the tea leaf jug, so she uses it so she uses it every day. And then, like, you know, when guests come, she'll go, anyone want a bit of dessert? And then the spoon comes out, and it's like, it's everywhere. She's made it a point to use it. And
So it's the most special object
Yeah,
that anyone out of all the siblings could have got.
Exactly, because no one else uses their objects, or, you know, I'm sure the land has been useful to the men.
Comes in handy, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, because they're all doing well. They've got lots of land in Istanbul. That,
They haven't got a spoon.
They haven't got a spoon. And so I feel like I've passed on the same determination. One, because it's my way of going, I'm using something my granddad used. And there's something transcendent about that, and a way to connect. And so, like, my first professional, like, chef experience when I was cooking with professional chefs, I took this as my tasting spoon. So, like, as you're cooking, you taste, and you'll have, like, a cup of boiling water, and you put your spoon in it, so you can repeat use the spoon to taste.
But
Well,
Melek,
that's
I'm
my
anxious
tip.
because those events, they're fast and furious and a lot of people around. Are you not anxious about...
No, I lose a lot of things, and I've managed not to lose this. Okay. It's crazy. Because it's crazy because I lose everything. But I've managed not to lose this, and it feels like, I've brought him along to a journey. So that's why this spoon is so special, because we're determined to make it special.
Yeah,
That's
and
why.
it sounds like it's special because of him, but it's also special because your mother.
Yeah,
There's layers to
and
it.
the women in my family.
Yeah.
And it felt like my mum's small act of, like, defiance, like, to say, oh, you know, this was jokes on us as the women who didn't get much, but no.
You can turn anything into a sacred object.
Yeah, exactly. So I like that. And I like thinking about small acts of resistance in the kitchen in different ways, and what they mean when you're limited and restricted by, you know, in Turkey you couldn't speak Kurdish, and you couldn't listen to Kurdish music in public. So the kitchen became a place of resistance in so many ways, by, like, cooking Kurdish food, listening to Kurdish music, cooking dishes that had stories, that had Kurdish stories, and then another level of defiance when, you know, objects that have certain meaning, and those, like, acts of defiance or determination or holding on to a connection when you've been moved so many times, and me using it in Tottenham, you know, and having not been back home for so long, and to the village.
Yeah.
And this is, and just to say, so this plate is from our village, and again, was given to me by a cousin who said, oh, your grandmother used to eat yogurt and bread in this plate. And I just remember, like, holding back tears and being like, oh, I love yogurt and bread. I didn't know why. Like, you know?
That's such a deep connection.
Yeah.
Through the object.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Guys, I'm just going to wait for the microphone to come down to you, just because we have some people watching online. If we don't use the mic, then they won't catch what's being said. Spoon. You're going to talk about spoons? No, we're loving spoons.
Right?
There's so many lovely stories, but you've picked, I think, on the most iconographic object, almost in the kitchen, because I think you lick it, and it goes into you almost. But there's the famous story which I've shared a bit with Angela about Elizabeth David's auction. And the spoons there was a whole bunch of wooden spoons that my brother put into this auction. Probably some weren't even ever used by her, but there was a massive bidding war. This was 30 years ago, right? They went up for £150 each, these wooden spoons. And apparently Prue Leith was at the auction and she couldn't afford one. And when we were on stage at the food festival last year, she told me, so I gave her one. But I just thought, that wooden spoons are really, or not ordinary spoons, are just things you hold. And they're annoying when you don't like them. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're also the most universal implement, aren't they? I mean, one of the chapters about other people that I found most moving to write was, because some of them are interviews with people now, and some of them are things from the past, but there's a chapter called Jacob Spoon about a man called Yakov Chaim, who was in one of the worst concentration camps in Nazi Germany. He was a Polish tailor before the war, clearly a man who was incredibly good with his hands. Again, I'm going to start crying. He was in this place, Dora Mittelbau, which was hell, living in these underground tunnels, being forced to make armaments for the Nazis. And they were forced to eat with no cutlery, which was one of the many, many dehumanizing ways in which they were treated, and the Nazi guards would then shout at them for being like animals eating without cutlery. And he took a piece of metal that was meant to make a weapon, and he turned it into a little spoon for himself. And it's, look up Jacob Chaim, Montreal Holocaust Museum. I haven't seen it in the flesh, I haven't been to Montreal, but I have interviewed Jacob's daughter and some of his other family members. And the thing that his daughter kept wanting me to notice is, look how beautiful this is. And it's your word, it's defiance, it's resistance. You're being treated as something like nothing, like an animal. And you're saying, no, I'm actually a civilized person who's going to eat with a spoon. I'm going to make my own little spoon, and I'm going to hide it on my person. And if he'd been seen at any moment of the spoon making, he'd have been tortured or killed or whatever. I mean, it's an incredibly brave thing to do. And this was then his treasured object after the war when he made a new life for himself in Canada. But I think it shows how, just as yours does, what a powerful thing that little piece of metal is. It's not just a little piece of metal. I can see your grandfather's hands on it, the shape.
Yeah, I think when, I remember when my uncles got together at one point and my mum made it a point to use the spoon to serve them with, because she got nothing and they, because they shared the land amongst the men, and that she made it a point to serve them with the spoon as well. So those little things that she did.
This is the thing of saying this is valuable, that any human being can actually make themselves something that's valuable.
And I think, when I was, I'm going to say reading, but with which language I was listening, to that section in the book, it was where the book for me took a switch slightly from it being objects which have found themselves in our lives because we've inherited them, or they often inherited things from home and those things. But it was the first time it felt there's something which somebody has intended to make something or to find something, that it's an intentional choice for something which is purposeful and meaningful in terms of a kitchen object. And I'm not sure I'd really kind of thought about those things as being, I think about, we're going to talk a lot about mums, we already have, and I'm sure we will, family things and things we've inherited, not making a choice to create something which has that kind of connection.
Yeah, no, it's an extraordinary thing that man did. And his daughter Gloria said he would talk about it, he would say, this was about being human, this spoon. I think is so beautiful. I mean, your point, spoons are absolutely universal. There are fork cultures, there are chopstick cultures, use of knives. I mean, knives are universal as cooking implements, but they're by no means universal as eating implements. Yeah. But spoons, there isn't a culture in the world that hasn't had spoons. Yeah. And so the form that the spoon takes is absolutely kind of key. And yeah, another of mine is, I mean, it's an absolute cliche thinking of wooden spoons, but this is one of my mum's wooden spoons. And at some point in the book, I mean, actually, I'm talking about completely different objects. There's a chapter on the prestige associated with drinking horns in a certain part of Cameroon. The young men in this area of Cameroon got really fed up with the prestige that was attached to buffalo horn drinking horns, and they felt, it kind of seems so far outside of most of our experience here, but the thing that isn't outside is feeling you don't have the money or the prestige to access a certain object. So they fought back by taking the cheaper cow horns and decorating them with the face of Bruce Lee, which turned them into something, it's transforming the value. But at the end of that, I say, I have no idea what it would mean to kind of desire a drinking horn like that. But what I do have is some of my mother's wooden spoons. And when I hold them, they're like a shield, not a sword. And I feel myself standing up taller and remembering how brave she was. She was a very stubborn, brave person, went through a divorce herself, which left her very sad at many moments and very feeling powerless at many moments. But she had these spoons. And there's, like you say, there's this kind of stirring the pot each day. Despite the things that life throws at you, there's a power in that, quiet power.
I'm just thinking that Mila, who are sponsoring the food season, they're giving away wooden spoons outside. And just as you're talking, I'm thinking, what an interesting choice. They could have chosen anything to like brand and give away as a nice, Mila wonderful, and they are wonderful. But they've chosen spoons to be a wooden spoon to be the thing which they're seeing as a way of connecting with people who are here for the food season. And given everything you've just said, and it's such an interesting choice. I'm going to start to come to the audience and sort of feed in some things. And Angela, in the audience, you happened to write to me and let me know what you were bringing, and it feels like they would be a good thing to kind of weave in right now, if that's okay for you. There's a microphone making its way.
So I've got 3 items. 2 of them I inherited. These 2, the egg slicer and the spatula, I inherited when I went to clear out my mum's flat in Beirut.
Angela, can I make you feel extra awkward and ask you just to like hold them up so people in the audience can see? So we have an egg slicer and a spatula.
I just remember with the egg slicer, it used to be, we used to fight over using it every day, my siblings and I. So you have to be very decisive and, no indecision with this egg slicer. And I really wanted to bring it back for the fun and the happy memories that it represented from my childhood. The yellow spatula is slightly different. My mum used to use this all the time, and I always felt that my mum was chained to the kitchen sink, and I vowed never to be like her, never to spend all my time in the kitchen. I want to be independent, be in charge, and cooking represented something negative to me. But funnily enough, in the years since, it has brought me back to my mum, and I now, my whole sort of career is based on cooking and writing about cooking. So it's a bit ironic, and I use it as a sort of constant apology, I guess, to her for not having understood her properly and never having gotten a chance to tell her that actually I now understand that cooking was her language of love. And finally, I think would be, this is something that my sister gave me, so it's not something inherited, it's the corer. And in our culture, we just love coring and stuffing vegetables whenever we can. And it's become a bit of a magical wand in our kitchen. And my sons who've grown up here, who've never really known Lebanon or Palestine, I've never known Palestine myself, but when we use this in our kitchen, I think of, I try and imagine them in the future, hopefully using it with their own children. And it's those quiet moments in the kitchen, that togetherness. So that's why I wanted to show you this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing in, for sharing those things. The yellow spatula is going to take me to the rotary whisk. B.
Yeah, so, this is one of my next objects. And actually, this particular one has no personal association at all, because this is what you said was so beautiful, and it resonated so much at so many levels. And what you said about not always giving your mum credit when you had a chance, I mean, that's absolutely what I feel through many of my kitchen objects. I'm just wanting to bring her back and say, you were right, and I value you. And I had the same experience of what do you do when you're clearing a parent's home. In my case, my sister and I were clearing her home when she was still alive, but suffering from dementia, and we'd moved her to a care home to be nearer to me. And we had to sell the house and had a million small decisions to make about what do you keep, what do you get rid of. You can't keep everything. One of my other chapters is an interview with, he would hate it, he can't bear to be called a hoarder, even though he wrote a book about being a hoarder, a brilliant man called Barry Yorgrau. But you can't keep everything because your own house gets has too much stuff in it. But then what do you let go of? How do you let go of something that carries such memories? Anyway, one of the things I let go of because I thought it wasn't important was my mum's rotary whisk. And I didn't think it was important because I have all these other ways of whipping eggs and whipping cream. I just thought, well, I'd been a balloon whisk person for all of my adult life, ever since I left home. And then I have a handheld electric whisk for everything else. So while we were deciding what goes to the charity shops, what do we keep, her rotary whisk, I quite happily got rid of. And then a few months later, I was at a friend's house and she cooked a lovely meal. And then she got out one of these and she was just whipping cream for dessert. And she just was doing this. And she didn't say, this is my mum's rotary whisk. She just was doing this. And she just said, this is mum. And it just kind of hit me what an absolute fool I was to get rid of the rotary whisk, because so then I had to find one on eBay, and it's absurd. I'm searching for a piece of my own mother on eBay, but there are many of these on eBay that's just not hers, it's someone else's mother or grandmother that I'm now holding on to. But I realized that what it would have brought back, this motion, is hands. And I think, looking at your beautiful yellow spatula, I can sort of see your connection with your mother's hands through that, and the vegetable corer even more so. And I think objects can be something to hold on to when hands are gone. And I think part of why, for each of us so far who've spoken, and I'm sure for other people in the room, kitchen objects are so particularly meaningful. Just thinking of all the things Melek so far has said that this spoon has been used for. There's a whole anthropology around objects, which I delved into as much as I could for my book. And these researchers who interviewed people in Chicago, about 300 families, about their most meaningful everyday household objects. And they divided them up into objects of contemplation, which would be things like photo frames, knickknacks, things that you put away in a special cabinet. And some kitchen objects are like that. I think previous generations would have taken things like silverware and crystal glasses and put them away and respected them and loved them like that. But most kitchen objects are given life through use. And what you've described with your spoon is that each successive use gave it a bit more prestige and a bit more love, that your mum used it to serve with and you used it to show your professional status as a chef. And there are many, and each time you use it, you're bringing their hands back, but you're also using it as an object of action, which is in a way taking something that could just be locked away in a cabinet and admired, and you're turning it into a toy, and you're a child again. And I think that's the magic, is something about your hands connecting with their hands in some way that after someone has died, you are desperate, the Joan Didion magical thinking, you're desperate to bring them back, and you can't, but this feels quite close.
Every time you make that noise with that bee, my heart is racing and my stomach is getting into a knot, because my mother had one of those. And I organised a session, planned it, loved the idea. Bees bought, was like, yeah, definitely, food season, lovely, we'll do this, gorgeous. And then in reading the book, I have found it so incredibly difficult, to be honest, because my B and I have slightly similar stories in terms of our mother's dementia and then dying, and having to sell my mum's house to pay for her care home care. And when my sister and I packed up the house, we naively, without really thinking about it, we thought she would have her kitchen things back. So we didn't divvy them up, we put them all in storage. Guys, 5 years later, they're still in storage. We have not been able, I know, and I was thinking about planning, please don't. I'm meant to be running the session, I would rather not cry. In planning the session, I was thinking, what should I bring, what should I bring? I realised I have nothing to bring, because all in storage. And, well, you know where I'm headed. Melek saved me.
Do you want something funny?
Something funny out.
Please,
All right.
please.
Okay, what should I bring? Okay, well, here's some things that I didn't get why my mum gave me. Like, when I moved out and I had my own place, she kept bringing things for the kitchen. I was like, I don't need more things. My kitchen is tiny. And I'm like, oh, minimal, cool, you know. And she kept bringing things. I was like, what is this? This is like, she kept giving me things. And I was so frustrated, and I'd never be like appreciative. And like, annoyingly, it's the things I use most that are so useful that she never explained. She never bothered to. She just like, you will use these, you will use these. And she'd leave them. Or sometimes they have keys to my house because we don't have boundaries. And so, like, they'll never say, by the way, this is now going into family issues territory with a Middle Eastern family, well, Kurdish family, shall I say, not the entire Middle East, but I'll speak for my family. They have keys to my house. Actually, in fact, I gave them one key and they copied, they made 3 copies, so mum, dad, and my sister have keys to my house. And Dad showed up, like, when I'm sometimes working from home, and also they don't understand work that is on a laptop. They don't think it's work. So if you're on a laptop doing this, you're not working. Like, that's not work. So, like, I'll work from home on the laptop, and I see, like, I'm in the living room, and Dad in the window going, "You in?" And he's not like message, and he'll just walk in and he'll go, "I'm just gonna work on the garden," and that's my family, so they're adorable. But so I'll come home and I'll find new objects. No one's let me know they've visited, they've left things, you know. So, but all these things that that feel annoying sometimes, but actually then are like wonderful. And so this is like when you've got half a lemon and you don't know what, like, you shouldn't throw it away, but you shouldn't just put it in the fridge like that, or half an onion, which will just, like, not hygienic to just leave. But I know there's Tupperware, you could put it in Tupperware, you could wrap it in stuff, but if you put it in Tupperware, and you put Tupperware in the fridge, you won't know if that's an onion. You won't remember. You'll forget that you've got half a lemon, half a lemon. These are things. So I've got one. So I've got. So I always use up my half lemons. I know when I've got half a lemon in the fridge. Onion, always.
That's for an onion.
That's for an onion, can't you tell? I know it looks like I know it looks like a boot. But it's for an onion.
I honestly thought it was a butter dish.
A butter dish?
I love that
no,
so much.
No. I was going to go, why would you need a butter dish? I've got one for a tomato, half a tomato, for avocado. It's just like a fridge of like toy things.
But they're actually useful.
They're so useful. I haven't told her yet that. I will.
One day,
I
tell
will.
her.
No. She knows how much she's appreciated.
But the onion one, that's absolutely...
The onion one is the most useful.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And also, like, you're not wasting, using wraps and things like that. But yeah, I love them. There are other items she's bought that I'm like...
Are they hers, or has she bought them for you?
No, these are mine. She's got her own.
No. Are they from her collection, I suppose, from her house? Or she bought them?
There's a store called Lakeland that she loves. Not to promote her place, but is this a live feed? You can cut it out. But she loves those kind of kitchen stores, and she's like calling me. And that's the other. Mum and Dad love Costco as well. And they're always buying me massive vats of like olive oil and loo roll. I know this is like not as related, but they'll get like a pack of 24 loo roll and they'll drop it off at the door. They won't even, they'll just knock and leave sometimes, right? And I remember my ex, when we were living together, when mum and dad would visit, they'd bring loo roll and he'd say, you know, we've got loo roll and we can buy our own. And he's like, why do they do this? I was like, just let them.
Go with it.
Just roll with it.
Just let them, and also please show appreciation, because it's, as we've gotten older, like they're less useful to us in the ways they thought. So just like they want to be useful and they want to be needed. And my mum and dad's way is to buy my loo roll. They're my loo roll supplier. And every time they buy it, I'm like, thank you, I really needed it. I'm just like, thank you.
Yeah, it is
I
love.
was just running out. And they do actually sense, they know when I need loo roll. They know when I need olive oil, and sometimes they bring back like corduroy trousers from Costco. They're like, oh. Did you need trousers? But yeah, so that's. Did that work? Did I
Oh, yeah, you totally changed the mood. Well done. I think we need someone else from the audience to show and tell. Who would like to? Yeah, go for it.
Hi, so mine is this tiny jar. It's a repurposed jar from my mom's kitchen again, and I'm Iranian, and as you can see here, it has a lot of saffron stain in it. So when she got married, I guess, I don't know where this jar came from, and she doesn't remember it. Many years ago, she would put saffron inside, and it was for something else, and like grinded saffron. And when I got married, and I was also very young, I went to her kitchen and said that, can I take something from your kitchen? And she said, yeah, everything. Iranian, Middle Eastern parents, like anything. I said, can I have your saffron jar? And she was just like, are you crazy? So like, I want the saffron jar. And then around like 7-8 years ago, when we moved to UK with my husband, this was one of the first things I packed. And like, you have to pack your whole life in like 2 suitcases. And like, I put it in, and it's interesting. You're all talking about like, moms and like the connection. I'm no more that close to my mom, unfortunately. I'm really trying now. But then still all of these conflicts we've had together, this has been always like sitting in my fridge, like with brute saffron inside. And like, I've been mad at her, it has been there. I've been angry at her, we've been like laughing together. This has been always there. And I guess like this is, and I'm shaking now, obviously. This has been something that like sometimes it's just like it is empty. Like today, like I knew that I wanted to bring it in. So for the past couple of days, we didn't like brew any saffron inside. And like I smelled it and I was just like, wow, that's home and that's her kitchen. And funny enough, she was like more of a businesswoman. She's not like, she's a great cook, but like doesn't like cooking that much. She's like going out, like working hard. And again, in a culture that it's sometimes even frowned upon, that you're in the Middle East, take care of your child, take care of your husband, cook, all these like big spreads. And she quite like fought against like even her parents that like, no, I want to work and I want to be a big businesswoman. And then I guess that's that for me, like the tiny repurposed jar that we use for saffron.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it is extraordinary, isn't it, how just the simplest, just a little jar, just means so much. And I think what's wonderful about all these stories we're all telling is we all get the essence of them so quickly. And I think the object's such a big part of that. We can all tell these stories, but having the tangibility of it is such a huge part of it as well. Anyone else in the audience while we're... Jace?
Hi, loving this, and I'm going to get upset as well. I am upset already. My mother died recently, and I love food. I love coming to these talks. Sorry. And I knew that she had a recipe book, that she wrote all her recipes, and in it she put my grandmother's recipes, and I it's all in her writing, and she's taken little pictures and stuck them in of recipes she's found, and she's written all my grandmother's recipes, and I found my recipes that she'd asked me to write in it as well, and I just thought... And my uncle wrote to me recently and said, would you like your grandmother's recipe book? And it's just this chronicle, really, of why I love food and just all the recipes she loved and she cooked for us. And yeah, it's lovely. So just, I know, it sounds like I'm really upset, but it's so nice. And I agree with you, B. I'm not ashamed of crying at all. I'm not sad. I'm like Steve, my part's always saying you should celebrate your mother. And it's just hard sometimes because we miss them as well. But yeah, anyway.
No, I thank you for that. And I think you would agree with me that it's such part of the grieving process, actually, having these things. And therefore, me not having them I haven't fully grieved for my mother because I haven't done that with those objects. But my mother's recipe book in the way that you're talking about, I had that if we ever get her things out of storage. I think I'm too scared to do it now. But when I do, what you're going through, I will have to revisit and you write so beautifully in the book about grief, I suppose, and those connections and what the objects mean through it.
That was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. And it does just sound like the most precious thing to have a book. I mean, to have something handwritten, traces going back like this. I think what's been amazing from all of the audience contributions so far is we've heard travelling through place. You've got this connection through place to Lebanon, to Iran, and travelling through time. That you're going back not just to your mother, but to your grandmother. And then here you are still cooking. And it's these kind of connections that are kind of profoundly moving. And I think it's happy and sad at the same time. I think from each person that's spoken, it's not one thing, it's both and. I mean, that's absolutely what I feel with my mother's objects. There's a kind of, yes, we've been crying a lot, but some of them as well, like my favourite chapter in the book, I see as a kind of tragicomedy, which is called The Mystery of the Silver-Plated Toast Rack, which was about my mother becoming absolutely convinced that someone had burst into her house and just stolen one thing, which was her precious toast rack. And each time she told the story, she would embellish it slightly. And at first, he was just a strapping young man who'd come in. And she rang up the police, and they politely came round and wrote it all down. Didn't actually launch a whole full-scale investigation, as she was obviously hoping. My son and I was staying with her, and we thought we searched in every kitchen drawer. And then she'd keep telling the story a bit more, and he'd become this handsome and strapping young man. And then we'd say, why would he just take a toast rack? And then she'd say, well, he was probably planning to have a picnic. I mean, you can't have a picnic without a toast rack, can you? And you could tell that even though he'd stolen from her as she saw it, she kind of had a crush on him. And even at the time, we found it half hilarious. And then half, this was one of the signs of dementia. I mean, it's a very common thing in the early stages that you have this paranoia that people are stealing from you. And then you look back and realise she suddenly stopped talking about the toast rack because she'd forgotten it even existed. And then I moved her to the care home where they gave her toast, and she never asked for a toast rack. And it was only when we were clearing the house that my sister found the toast rack at the very back of the cupboard. I can't bring the toast rack along because my sister has it. But yeah, that's talking about things being happy and sad at the same time. Dementia's not funny, but you kind of have to find the black humour where you can. And I don't know if you had this with your own mother, but what happens to someone's brain when pieces of their self are falling away bit by bit, which is what dementia feels like, and yet they're still there. And there was something about her extraordinary imagination, clearly her admiration for this fictitious man, and a sort of slight sense of poetry. She loved wild green spaces herself, so clearly she'd have loved to be having a picnic with a toast rack in a nature reserve, perhaps with this handsome young man. And that was still part of her that was imagining that. So I think part of what we've all been doing with objects, I mean, the person with the saffron jar, you're saying that actually, in a way, this domestic part of your mother isn't necessarily how she would define herself, but that's a piece of her that you can find a connection with. And I think that was a great point as well, that this stuff isn't straightforward. I mean, that spoon, my word, that spoon is a complicated thing, that your mother is given this gift that could feel a bit like an anti-gift. But she's going to reclaim it and make it something that works.
Is there anyone else who, because time is going to start for anyone, I do want to make sure anyone who's...
There was someone at the back, Sarah
yes,
at the back.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jade.
So I have a set of coupes, like champagne glasses, that my paternal grandparents broke out every Christmas to make champagne cocktails. And I didn't get to drink these until I was, well, not 21 in the States, 18 or 19. But to me, they were just the height of glamour. And then, so when my grandmother passed away at the age of 99 in 2016, I took custody of those glasses and I got into making cocktails with them. And so they had this second life of like entertaining and the good life. And I had this frizz of like, oh, I'm like carrying on what my grandparents did and serving up these beautiful cocktails. This story does not end well. My husband, about 18 months ago, came home with a sort of queasy look on his face and said, I read this article on the internet about vintage glassware and I've ordered a lead testing kit. And yes, if you have painted glasses from a certain era, that paint is lead-based. So we've now shifted, they're no longer objects of action. They're no objects of contemplation. So I do look at them, they're still in my cocktail cabinets, and every time I open that cabinet, I look at those glasses wistfully, and then I take out my brand new, modern, gold-painted glasses.
That is brilliant.
Oh, beautiful.
That's such a great story. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has maybe especially brought something, or anyone else who wants to share? No more things actually brought.
Oh, there's someone at the front.
So sorry, turning my head the wrong way.
I have a question to share.
Yeah, go on, yes, please. And then we'll move the microphone along.
Furniture. I've spent my life designing kitchens, mostly using the idea of the principle of using furniture. And this is a historic way we all used to design and build our kitchens. Do either of you two or three, Angela, I can ask you this next weekend, do you have any specific thoughts about how furniture relates to memory in the kitchen, and any of the practices that you think that could be enhanced by thoughtfully understanding the role of furniture? That's my question.
Furniture in the kitchen.
Well, one of the things in storage, sorry, we're going back to my mum in storage, is her kitchen table. And
I was just going to say,
I would love to have that. Probably, there are not too many things which, well, I don't know, we'll see if we ever get to it, but the kitchen table is the thing which I know I would absolutely love to have that. Because I think that would, because it's where she baked, it's where we ate, and that would feel, if I only had that, I think that would feel like such a wonderful connection.
That was exactly what I was going to say, and I have a chapter called Our Kitchen Table, which is one of the ones that's about my ex-husband leaving and me feeling his presence most strongly in this place to my left, where he always sat, and looking at these knots of wood, which I'd never really noticed before, and thinking, oh, that was clearly the knots of wood predated his hands, but I felt the traces of his hands most strongly there. But there was a quotation I found in the secondary literature, which I was just going to read out. It's very short because I loved it, from Jaeger, 1983. How is it that a kitchen table we once admired in a shop window can later become the stable, silent foundation of family meals and conversations with friends? And I kind of feel this applies to so many of the objects. Your mother goes into Lakeland and finds a plastic lemon, and that then, it becomes a kind of something it's so much more. It's been made in a factory somewhere, but the thing it is to you is a foundation of daily kitchen practice, isn't it? And
yeah, it's not that. It's just useful.
It's useful.
I like that. This one doesn't have like deep meaning, but it's useful every day, and I like that. You know, I have things in the kitchen that are really,
But,
really useful.
but as we said, it's such a thing of love of her choosing to do that.
Well, you know, the lovely lady who spoke about grief, thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to say, I feel like I cook. I mean, I cook for loads of different reasons. I mean, write about cooking and everything. But one is grieving for the connection I will never have with home and a loss of language. So I don't speak my mother tongue. I speak Turkish, but that's not my mother tongue. And I don't have connection to family that I will never have connection to again. So I never had time with my grandmothers and my grandparents, and I never got to speak the language they spoke. And so I grieved for feeling like I'll never understand in the same way. And so really cooking is reconstructing a sense of self and identity and feeling whole again. And this plate, when I found out, like, you know, my grandmother used it for, you know, eating her yogurt and bread in the village, I used it for a shoot where we were donating recipes for a charity cookbook. And so I donated a recipe, and then we used a bigger version of this plate to serve it in, to photograph it. And I told the story of when I remember a phone conversation with my grandmother when we'd moved here and we'd had to leave them behind. And we were just trying to figure out if we'd ever be able to go back, or whether we could bring her here. And it just didn't happen before she passed away. And I remember the last conversation we had with her, and we were trying to explain, like, because bureaucracy, you can't explain bureaucracy, and it just didn't make sense to her, like, why we couldn't go back to visit. And she said this saying, "Yer demir gök bakır," because she couldn't understand. I was trying to explain. She couldn't understand, and she said that, and I didn't know what it meant. And then I found out later it meant the earth is steel and the sky is copper. It's a way of saying you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
That's so beautiful, Melek. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway.
It's 3 o'clock and we're meant to finish. But because basically I'm in charge, we are going to overrun a little. But if anyone needs to go, if you've got something you're meant to do at 3 o'clock, then obviously no one's going to be offended if you need to go. But otherwise, we are just going to roll with this ever so slightly, because I don't think everyone's quite had the opportunity yet. I think the microphone needs to head that way.
Thank you so much. I just want to talk about a celebration, because we hope my grandson's going to be 21 next week. When he was 13, he bought Kenneth Holmes' cookbook, a very unusual choice for a 13-year-old. And he said, "Granny, I'd like to cook my way through this book." And we have 2 objects in the kitchen, and we cook together from the age of 13 to now. Every time he comes to my house, we cook together. One is a wooden stirrer, flat wooden stirrer of no value whatsoever, but he took it to university with him. And the other, which I told him was invented by a woman. It used to come from Lakeland, and they no longer make it. They did 1 million of them, and it's a tiny little plastic thing where you can scrape the corners of a pan. Everything, you can get the pan quite clean just by using this tiny object. Unfortunately, I still have 3 left, and he has 1, where you can, but he knows it was invented by a woman. And so I've given him all these, hopefully, memories. And one day he rang me up and he said, "Granny, you know, I've saved an awful lot of money because I'm not living in Hall, I'm cooking for myself." And every time we have a conversation, we talk about what he's cooking. And I hope it's not processed food. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want one of those.
And maybe that is a joyous note on which we should wrap ourselves up. But we have got a bit of wood sticking out there, Melek, and I think we're all curious about the sort of bit of wood sticking out there. So let's make up that our last show and tell.
Okay, well, this is a rolling pin. Yeah. And yeah, I remember like seeing it in the kitchen growing up, and like Mum saying it's a rolling pin, and I was like, it doesn't look like the ones I see like that English people have, you know, just feeling like, you know, and I just remember finally spending some time with some women in Enfield, some like Kurdish and Turkish women who had turned this Auntie Hatice, who turned her garden shed into a bakery station, and making flatbreads that you like on the sudge, which is a like concave shaped iron sheet that you put over the fire, and you make really thin flatbread that you turn crisp, because and then you stack it up, and then you have it for like, you can basically store it away, and then just it keeps for like months, and then so you whenever you want some bread, you just sprinkle water on it to rehydrate it, and it's amazing. And there's certain things made that are better to be made in batch with a group of women, so then they share what they make. So it was a station of women, like 5 of them, some of them making the dough, and then 2 tables on the floor, so really low tables, so they sit on the floor and use these rolling pins. And then I just saw it like magic. These, so because you roll with it, but then you lift the dough up and you flip it around, and you do this, and it's like I wish I brought images. It would have been amazing. And then it's easy to use it then to lay it on the concave sheet. Yeah, it's like wand, like it's just amazing.
Have you ever done workshops of how to? I want to learn.
Well, I'm not an expert in doing it. No, it's just because you have to be doing that, like making hundreds of sheets
over and over and over.
So, like, I can use it, but not in the same way. And I use it to make baklava, which I love. But actually, Chloe's here, and when we were sharing the oldest things in your kitchen, Chloe, you shared your rolling pin, which is this gigantic thing. Would you mind sharing what it means to you? Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's fine. It's probably about this big round.
There's a microphone just wending its way.
Sorry.
No, not.
And it's like this.
Yeah, it's a massive rolling pin. So it's probably, I would say, like this big round, but the size of a large grapefruit, and about this long. And I brought it back with me from the States because it was something my grandmother had given me. And it wasn't even something she used. It was just because she had given it to me. But think that, you know, I had 2 or 3 suitcases with me, and this huge rolling pin was the thing that made the cut.
Yeah.
And now it just sits in my kitchen, and I look at it every day. It's really nice.
And, and Chloe's... I mean, Chloe's a famous, incredible baker, so but yeah, no, I love that image of you holding the rolling pin when you sent it. But yeah, what I left feeling was this inherent wisdom that I keep learning about, you know, through these tools that we're seeing, and then this inherent wisdom that I'm learning that I have. And I'm just going to quickly share the final thing, because this is like my knife that I...
They were all told not to bring sharp objects.
Oh, were they? Sorry, I'm holding...
No, it's good. It's good.
Do you know,
that's a shock.
I travelled on the tube with this, but like there's rules around how you carry your sharp knife, and I followed the rules. I just wrapped it up. Anyway, so this is my one knife that I use for like everything. It's round, so it's great for like chopping herbs and quick chopping and fine chopping. But it's really strong and sturdy, so it's great for like carving meat and things. And you know, in chef school, I briefly went, and then I thought it was just a bunch of BS, and I left. For many reasons. It was a really toxic environment. But I realized I'm learning everywhere. Like, there's wisdom in learning how to cook in so many environments, in our mother's kitchens, that when we're in professional, like, chef school, you get to, and, you know, of respect to it, there's real value in there as well. But as in, there's not one place where you can learn everything. And you might, like, every person's kitchen carries wisdom in it for different reasons. And just trust, I just realized, you know, we must trust in our intuition. And anyway, when I'm in professional kitchens, like you get told that you need to get sets of knives for everything, you know, one for carving and like millions of them. And then when I do spend time in professional kitchens, there's these like men who like show off their like Japanese knives that spent so much money on. And I went to a knife store and you know, the guy was telling me about all these amazing knives, and I was like, that one looks good. And then he was like, oh, this one's £45. I was like, oh, great, you know. And I got it, and I don't know if anyone's watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones.
Who's not watched Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I mean, it's not aged well for many reasons, but like, there's the one scene where is it the Holy Grail, where like they have to pick the cup that Jesus like used. And like some of them are picking fancy ones. It's no, Jesus used this like really humble. Yeah. I'm going to bring it round. I'm gonna. But basically, I felt like I picked the right knife because now when I go to professional kitchens and I use this knife, all the chefs. Are so impressed with it. They're like, where'd you get this?
I love the way you hold it, like it's just an extension of you.
And like, I felt, oh, I do have this inherent wisdom of the right thing, picking the right thing, because actually, this doesn't chip. It's used for everything. It's just so great, and so many people are impressed with it. And I love when people are impressed with it. I'm like, oh, I did a thing, you know. And I didn't go to professional chef school.
Well, I didn't finish
yourself. I dropped out.
But like, it was knowing your own senses.
But I got this right. I got this right. You know.
It's brilliant.
That's it.
I'm going to release you, otherwise we're going to stay and stay and stay. I feel enormously grateful to be in Melek for being here and sharing, but really to all of you for being here, particularly the people who spoke, because I think that's a very brave thing to do, actually, in a space like this and with people that you don't know and with sharing very personal things. And so I think that's very brave, and I'm very grateful. And to everyone else for so generously supporting people in doing that, I think has been very moving and very special. And I very profoundly thank you for that. And especially to Melek and to for being the engine for us to have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.